Alright, so welcome to a very different sort of homebrew. In this video, I'm just going to be going over what I usually do when I get a guitar in for maintenance. So this is just going to be me kind of going through a sort of checklist on things that I'm going to do to a guitar that requires a little bit of TLC. So, first things first, one of the very first things that I check is whether the neck is straight or not. So I already know that this guitar came in because the truss rod needs adjusting and just minor fixes like that. So I'm going to take a notched straight edge, and thankfully this is a 25.5-inch scale instrument, so I got the right edge for it. And yeah, there is a considerable dip in the middle here. So I check the middle of the fretboard, and then both edges. Alright, so that's an easy fix to do. So because this has a locking nut, I'm just going to loosen that up. Like so. So I can actually get to the truss rod a little easier. Now I could be doing this at a later point as well. And I probably will recheck it at the very end, because this way I have the string tension already present, so it's not going to change when I take the strings off. The important thing is to keep on checking. And now I know that some players like a little bit of a bow in their neck, but more times than not, I've just gone ahead and made the neck as flat as possible. Main thing is that you want to do this in segments. So now I've adjusted it so that it is flat, and then when we get to the end of maintenance, we're going to check it again. Another one of those things that I immediately take note of when looking at an instrument is the amount of cleanup I need to do. Now there's all kinds of gunk on here, lots of dust. The bridge is, well, very dusty and not looking all that great. That knob is very faded. General cleanup. All kinds of gunk on the back. So I'm gonna clean up all the surfaces, and the fretboard as well is very dry and it's got grime on it. So I'm gonna clean up the fretboard, hydrate it, and yeah, polish up the lacquer as well, polish up that knob, make sure everything's looking nice and good and clean. Another thing that I do, one of the very first things, is I check the sides of the frets, whether they're poking out. In this case, they are not. They seem pretty good, so they're not going to need attention. I already did the electronic check on this, and it was completely fine. There was nothing wrong with it, so I don't need to do anything with that. Yeah, so I think we have a good base to go from. When I put the strings back on, I'll check for the intonation as well and go from there. Another good thing to do at this point is that if this is a customer's guitar, you want to check what action they have set on the guitar as it comes in, so that you don't change it. So I'm looking at 2 mil on the bass side to the frets, and about 1/2 mil on the treble side. So I want to keep that action for this specific player. And before I take the strings off, because it's not a guitar that I've built. I'm curious. I always want to look at what the build quality is on other instruments. Now, there's a couple of things that I've noticed straight away. It is a maple cap, but it has a quilted maple veneer. The thing is, I can see that from the side, from the binding, because you see a little bit of the veneer on the very, very edge of the faux binding. And now I'm starting to think that, does it actually have a maple cap at all? Nope, it does not have a maple cap at all. It is just a veneer top with a faux binding. It's easy to check from the end grain. The grain follows through, so it only has a veneer top on it. And you can also see that some of the staining has seeped through. It doesn't look all that clean. There's some black on the edges there. The headstock has a lot of that going on. The job on the binding is a little so-and-so. This is a very good instrument. I really like it. I really, really like it. I've always liked Ibanez's. I've never had one. I've always wanted one. The book matching is a little bit, well, it is what it is, but I'm guessing that at this price point, it's as good as you're going to get it. The frets seem to be very good. I'm going to still check them when I take the strings off. One thing that I have noticed, though, is that if I look at the guitar straight on, the pole pieces are not lined up with the strings at all. So this pickup would need to go a little bit more that way, but there just isn't room because of the routing. The routing is very, very close, but the pickup is off kilter. So looking at this guitar straight on, you see that the bridge pickup as well just isn't lining up. The pole pieces are completely off. Guessing that the spacing on this pickup just isn't right for the sort of bridge that this is, because getting this one to line up, or this pole piece on the bass string to line up, would mean that this would go completely out of whack. That's nowhere near. This is better. The neck pickup is much better, but yeah, as you can see, it would just need a fix to go this way a little more. But there isn't any room to do that. Now that I've done all that, it's time to take off all the strings. Also, very important that way before any of these phases, you've actually checked the tuning that this guitar has come in, so you can tune it back to the same tuning. Just in case, if your client uses a non-standard tuning. In this case, this was in drop G. So because it's a 7th string, that means that it's tuned one step down. So standard tuning, but one step down, and then a dropped G on the bass. With the strings off, I am going to check with a fret rocker to see how the frets are, if they need any work. Now immediately, there's a rock. Which means some of the frets are a bit high. Not a considerable amount. And only on the lower register, by the looks of it. Now, again, I'm just going to check. Yeah, see? Now that I took the strings off, this rocks as well, which means that the truss rod has changed just a little bit. There. Minor adjustment. Now we're going to check the rock again. So by the looks of it, and you always want to, if you haven't used a fret rocker before, the main concept is that you have these different sides that go over 3 frets at a time. And you're looking for a sort of rock to see if some frets are not even. Now I know that there's still some in there, so I'm just going to give that a quick sanding down. Doesn't seem like it needs too much, but enough to warrant one. So just by using a Sharpie, I'm going to mark out the tops of the frets. Now I don't expect this guitar to need all that much work. So I'm not gonna, if you need to do a lot of work, which this guitar isn't gonna need, you want to mask off your fretboard with masking tape. But because this doesn't need it, I am not going to do that because there is no point. Alright, so at this point, the sanding paper that I have on here is pretty close to like 320. So when doing this, don't put any pressure on the block. Let the sandpaper do it. Let the sandpaper do all the work. And I can already see that there's a fall away here. So I'm not going to touch the fall away because that felt pretty good already. It was only this area that kind of had issues. So that is all gone now. There's no rocking to be heard of. Now, seeing as now it has file marks on it, it's time to get rid of those with some 320 paper. Now, because the tops of the frets have changed now, I'm going to go back with the fret crowning file just to make sure that everything is as it should be. Because you want the point in the middle of the fret to be as small as possible. If it's not, that means your intonation point is in between those 2 points. If there's a sharp point in the middle, that is where your intonation will be. So, very important phase to do this. I'm going to use this little triangular file with the edges beveled down, so they're not going to damage the fretboard at all. And just a couple of swipes are all you really need. If you're worried that you're going to damage your fretboard, it is a very good habit to mask off. But I've been doing stuff like this for long enough to trust my tools, trust the way that I use them. There. Not much effort needed. So, now that we have file marks going this way along the fretboard, of course, if you're doing bends, it's going to hit those file marks and it's not going to sound all that great. So, take some 320 sandpaper and fold it into a tool, and then just hit the surfaces of those frets to get rid of all the file marks. Now, alternatively, you can use fret rubbers. These go from very coarse to super fine, and frankly, they follow the shape of the fret and will not damage your fretboard So they are, without a doubt, the quote-unquote safer option if you're unsure of your work. Now, this part I would do anyways, because it is polishing up all those frets. And that's kind of your job as a luthier. And when a client comes in, you want to clean up their guitar and make it sound better than what it was when it came in. So polished up frets. The higher polish you get on your frets, the better the guitar sounds. That's just the way it goes. So nice mirror shine frets definitely help. Now, because I'm going to be polishing them up, I am going to mask off the fretboard because I'm going to be using a polishing compound. Now, the polishing compound is something that you do not want to get into your fretboard. That being said, don't need a lot of tape. Just one layer is more than enough. You just press the edge of the masking tape into the base of the fret. This way, you're making sure that there are no gaps. You can get right in there. Alright, so going back to the very course, now that I have the fretboard masked off. And when you start moving through the different grits, you start noticing how it's building up a polish. It doesn't need too much work because we didn't really do a lot of filing or sanding or anything like that on the frets. It was just a general cleanup, making sure everything was nice and straight. When doing this, you don't really need to worry about, changing the shape of the fret at all. The rubbers themselves, they follow the shape of the fret, and they don't take off that much. They just polish everything up. Yes, they are abrasives, but they're not abrading in a way where they are removing lots of material. Going for the final grit, so the super fine fret rubber, and honestly, this is where most guitar factories leave off their fretwork at. But I intend to go one step further because yes, while this is very nice and shiny, it could be a lot better. So after this portion, I'm just going to take up some metal chrome polish and get them to a lovely, lovely mirror shine. Because that way, they will feel so good to the player. Because the shinier your frets, the less resistance they're going to give when doing bends and stuff like that. It will just feel fast, quick, and comfortable. Just the way that you would want your frets to feel. Because the neck is, without a doubt, without question, it is the control surface of a guitar. So if it doesn't feel right to the player, playing is going to be a little bit less enjoyable. So your job as a luthier or tech guy or general guitar maintenance dude is to make the musician feel like their playing is effortless. So with a little bit of elbow grease, you get a ridiculously polished up frets. So you can see the difference here between the two. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the fretboard. I usually like to do 4 frets at the same time. And you don't need a massive amount of polish because, quite frankly, you're not polishing up a massive amount. Now, if you had a buffing wheel, this would be so much quicker. But if you don't, you don't. You can also do this with a Dremel with a buffing wheel attachment on it. When doing that, though, you have to be very careful not to stay on one fret for too long, because if you do, that might overheat the fret and make the glue melt and the fret come undone a little bit. And that would be, needless to say, very bad. You don't want to do that. It would be kind of the exact opposite of what you're trying to do in making a guitar play well. And yeah, I'm just using a normal kitchen towel to do this. And when you're doing this, be sure that you have your neck supported and you're not pressing down too much on it. Because applying downward pressure onto a neck, you might run the risk of bending out of shape. So you don't need to use a tremendous amount of force. Just a little elbow grease to kind of get you going. There. Now while I have the polish out, I'm just gonna bring my attention to the tone knob, because that does not look, it does not look great. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a polish. There. Good as new. And then, even though I'm not affiliated with Crimson Guitars anymore, I do really love their fretboard restorative oil. And I have no problem saying that. It is a really great product. Now, I don't like using lemon oil or oils by different other brands meant for cleaning up guitars, because frankly, they contain or are based off of petroleum-based products. So what they mostly do, instead of actually moisturizing the fretboard and conditioning it, they dry it out even more. This stuff, on the other hand, does exactly what it's supposed to do. So it conditions the fretboard, moisturizes it, and keeps it looking nice and shiny for much longer. And at the same time, acts as a cleaning product. As you can see, lots of gunk coming off the fretboard already at this point. And then when I rub off all the excess, it's going to take care of all the rest of the gunk. The main idea is to just kind of oil everything up, rub it into the wood, let it sit for a little bit, not dry up, but just so it kind of like sets and seeps in, and then remove all excess with a dry towel. While that's kind of setting or curing, we're going to start on cleaning up all the nasty gunk, because there is quite a lot of it. And you didn't see there because I didn't have the camera pointing in the right place. There's a lot of dust, a lot of crap built up everywhere. So I'm just gonna go grab myself a Q-tip or two, which is used for cleaning. I wouldn't use just straight up water to do this because it will stain everything up a good bit. And cause more damage and dry everything up at the same time, because this part would also be very good to do with some WD-40 if it seems like the bridge is dry. You can lubricate it with some WD-40, which is used for machine lubrication. So oiling everything up and making them look good is kind of the goal here. So as you can see, I'm also going ahead and cleaning up the pickups, the pull pieces. At this point, I'm going to go back, going to clean up that excess oil off of the fretboard. And yep, there you can see a lot of crap coming off still. And man, this fretboard is looking so much better than it did when I first started working on it. It's hydrated, shiny, and more than likely gonna feel like a dream to play. It's the little things. It's not much effort, but it makes a hell of a difference to the player. I can guarantee that. There we are. Fretboard's nice and clean. I'm going to get back to cleaning up the pickups and the rest of the guitar. Not much wiggle room here, but enough just to get everything cleaned up. Also very interesting to find out that there's these huge springs underneath. I like finding out how bigger guitar manufacturers build their instruments. And then later on, when I put the strings back on, we'll adjust the pickup height accordingly. And now comes time to clean up the body and get it nice and polished up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some car polish to kind of do this. Now, a very important thing that I hate seeing online is guitar techs and stuff like that. They'll use a microfiber cloth. Now, there's a very big reason as to why I don't use a microfiber cloth, and that's basically solely for the purpose that microfiber cloths, well, they scratch up the surface of your guitar because of all the fibers in the cloth, so to speak. So instead, you should use a towel that is, or cloth that is as soft as possible. So I'm just using a normal 100% cotton cloth to do this, but I would recommend using one of those cloths that you use to actually polish up car windshields, because those are ridiculously soft and would not destroy the finish on your guitar, because, well, you don't want to destroy your windshield either on your car. Now, because I'm going to be polishing out the back with polish and stuff like that, I don't want to polish up these back plates. So I'm just going to remove them for this part. Now this is also the good part where you could check all the electronics, how they look, whether they would need any attending to. I've already used aluminum tape, so I don't need to do that, which is one of the things that I usually do. Really love the Ibanez trim system. So cool. Such an interesting piece of tech. Alright, there we are. And the electronics themselves, they look fine, so I don't need to do anything with that. But like I said, I've already checked that before I started this whole process. So, a little bit of polish. Then a healthy application of polish, of course. And there we are. And then buff it down, or buff it up. There, that looks great. While I have this lying down like this, I'm going to do the neck. Huh, interesting. This is not a lacquered up neck by the looks of it, because I can see a seam going here, and I can already see that it's not polishing up the same way that the lacquer is. A nice little touch. So it is supposed to be not as shiny, which makes sense. A lot of guitarists nowadays, they like a non-glossed up neck, more of satin feel to it. So I'm not going to go and buff it out too much. At the same time, I'm cleaning up the tuners here. They looked a little worse for wear. There we go. That's all cleaned up. Then the sides. Don't know what's happened here. It looks like something has been spilled on the guitar. So I'm going to be getting rid of that at the same time here. A little bevel scarring on the guitar. This means it's been played quite a bit. I should mention that this is one of the guitars from the guitarist in Nation in Despair. I did one of his up a couple of weeks back, and he brought in this one. Great band. You should really go check them out. I might be slightly biased having just filmed their music video, but it's always fun to make a music video for a band when you really like their music to begin with. So yeah, I'm just going to put these back while I have the guitar flipped this way around at the top, which is really dirty. I'm going to need a bit more. Oops, that's quite a bit, but I'll put some of that on the headstock. The thing is, you don't need to worry about putting on too much polish, because in the end it just means that you're giving yourself a little bit more work to do. I removed the knobs so they're not in the way and I can actually get all around. It's always good to check your work up against natural light. Then you can see if there's any spots you've missed. Just final little rubbing everything off. Now, because it has this trim system, what I usually do is I bring the fine tuning so that it's halfway for everything. Now, I haven't touched the action at all, so I'm just going to make sure. Yep, 2 mil. Half a mil. Great. So now I can start getting to the tuning portion, which I'm going to use my Boss ME25. I do have a secondary tuner right there in the headstock, but I prefer to use this one because it's a bit more accurate. Let's have a look. Great. So by the looks of it, everything is already intonated, which is fun. It means I don't need to do that, because that is a royal pain. Yep, pretty darn nice. So with locking nuts, I usually leave the tuning just a hair flat, because when I do this part, it's gonna go out of whack anyways. So just slightly put these on, but I just remembered, important thing, now check the truss rod. This was the main reason that this came in first place, and by the looks of it, it's all better now. Tensioned up and everything. Locking nut in place. Time to tighten her up. Alright, so low G needs a little more wiggle room, so I'll bring that down. Tighten up the nut again. Great. So that concludes how to do a setup, quick maintenance of a guitar that's come in. And yeah, not much else to it. Hope you enjoyed. Click like and subscribe to see more content in the future. And yeah, I'm just gonna have some fun with this now because it sounds awesome.